Ah, ¿te cargamos con entonces? Ya, ya. Y el vasito de agua. O poner la mesa a este lado. Sí, toma. No sé, son rato que se pasa y la presentación hicieron desde la silla. Como más rápido. Ya. Así que pueden partir sentado y... Ah, pero tú puedes estar sentado al lado, quizás no. Ya. Partimos con la gente entonces. Sí. Ya, dale. Bien, buenas tardes entonces a todas y a todos.
Very well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for waiting. We invite you to be seated if you wish to sit further ahead here so we can further towards the stage. We will start off, therefore, with this new session, 14 hours, 15 minutes. What incentivates the private sector to invest in energy in Latin America and the region? We want to give the floor now to our moderator, Rosa Riquelme, Executive Director of the Energy Sustainability Agency, and our panelists as well, who are here waiting for us. This is 100% a feminine panel. We're very happy. All these issues that are so relevant are led by women in Latin America and Spanish America, Spanish-speaking America. I'd like to give the floor to Andrea Hines, for climate change advisor from Copenhagen, from the Program of the United Nations for the Environment. So welcome, Andrea. Also, I give the floor to Gemma Beria Bueno, Senior Project Manager of Climate Change of Alinea. Welcome, Gemma or Gemma. Stephanie Noor, International Director of Econolela. Welcome, Stephanie. And Rosa, you have the floor. It should last about half an hour. Thank you, Roberto, for your quick words. We'll be very efficient with time now, and I'd like to start off greeting our panelists, also our audience. I'd like to convey from the Energy Sustainability Agency that this is a very expected panel by ourselves, energy efficiency of this sector has a lot of benefits for people. This sector, for the entrepreneurial area, and it's an engine for growth as well. So we're going to have a conversation regarding what are the gaps that we have and these enablers that are not so present in our country sometimes. It's something that we expected to be able to dialogue, therefore. In this sense, I'd like to tell you that we will have 2 rounds of questions here, Q&As. We're going to talk about incentives and the business models that are currently being implemented at a worldwide level regarding energy efficiency and also the enabling conditions for this. So first off, I'm going to start off with Stephanie. The first is that in the agency we have seen that incentives are evident to be able to progress forward in energy efficiency. We have had different programs for micro and small enterprises to help them to make the decision on investments, change of equipment, on trainings, on indicators to measure the management cycle. And it's very difficult, we see that without incentives for them to see savings. So therefore I wanted to ask you, from your experience, even aside incentives, what would be those business models that we could activate using these incentives, which will allow us to destroy the barrier of energy and efficiency? Well, thank you, Rosa. It's clear that the private sector many times does need incentives. And one of the reasons for this is many times because you do not know what are the other benefits of implementing energy efficiency projects without incentives. So therefore, I believe that the first measure is to increase training of the private sector at all levels, whether it be at commercial, industrial, or residential level, so people can understand better what would be the economic benefits, but also environmental benefits. There are many other benefits as well, which exist for energy efficiency. Once they understand that, we wouldn't understand the economic benefits, of course, to see if you invest without any sort of financial incentive, it could be profitable. It could be something feasible, economically speaking, for a company or for a household. It's not always necessary, but we need to know how to do this. So what is necessary sometimes is a technical support. We're talking about support to accompany companies and enterprises. It's not true that a hospital and industry will invest on energy efficiency because it's not its model, it's not its business really to do this. A hospital has to take care of people. But we do need light for this, or water, so all these supplies and all these materials. So we need some sort of model for a companion to accompany them. For example, ESCOs, which is a company model for energy efficiency services. This sort of model could be interesting to explore because these are companies that not only identify projects, but they accompany the end customers or final clients in the implementation of projects, on the follow-up of all savings, and they see whether the project would be feasible at the end of the day. So this collaboration is very useful for all clients whose role is not in energy efficiency. So the key to understand that energy efficiency, therefore, is there for all, but not all can identify this. In this sense, we would have to have training programs, workshops, and as you said also, not just identifying, but if not, accompanying the implementation of the solutions as well. So these estimated savings at the beginning can appear at the end of the works. Therefore, Andrea, I'd like to ask you on this. We know that incentives currently are a dynamic way. One co-finances project, and automatically this generates private investment. But we do know that there are other enabling elements of public policies which could help the business models. Stephanie was mentioning can be more scalable and somehow we can progress on energy efficiency. From the international experience now, what do you see, Andrea, there? What, from public policy, how much can we contribute there? The first contribution that public policy should carry out is to have an energy rate which reflects the real cost. That's the first incentive. Without an energy rate that reflects a real cost to transport, to supply and distribute this energy, no model will be interesting for the private sector. Remember, we're talking about the private sector here. We believe we're talking about the household sector, industry as well, small, medium, and large scale, and transport as well. So one thing about public policy is adapt the rates or tariffs is transversal for all. Nevertheless, to adapt each of these instruments to their own particularities of the sector. It's not the same, for example, to work with a residential way than with a fleet of cargo vehicles. Rates or tariffs are very important because many countries in the region, we have a strong sort of a composition on the rates of subsidies, especially on fossil fuels. And this is absolutely necessary, of course. Also, with these, just with rates, it's not enough. Rates are not enough. Once we have the base rate, then we have to have three pillars on top of this. The International Agency of Energy proposes what it's called the policy package of energy efficiency with three pillars. One, regulation, other of information, where we include the training, and the third, incentives, where we include, therefore, rates or tariffs. So therefore, on regulations, well, we're talking about countries that have certain obligations for certain sectors. Chile is an example with its law of energy efficiency, the obligation, therefore, to implement management systems for energy and to inform for the larger users. And many times this is necessary, therefore, and we understand in all cases we need more than just one pillar. It's not enough just with incentives or just with the regulations or training. We always need to have these three sort of pillars included regarding regulations from the minimum standards for each of these sectors, obligations for larger users, on codes of construction, for example, for residential areas, commercial, public services. And of course, to talk to a user, a household user, than a large company, where they have to train, technically speaking, their whole personnel. We have to train the supply market of energy efficiency. Chile has been working for many years on this topic. So we do need some multiple options regarding the different players of this ecosystem, whether it be private and public sector. We have this layer of information on awareness for the general user and information as well. So it's important to generate continuity there. Public campaigns, for example, are important because they reach all sectors, all citizens, but they require continuity in time. We can't just make a great campaign for 2 months and that's it. No, this requires permanent messaging, permanent communication, and through different channels even. So the person will receive always the same message by different channels, from different interlocutors, not just the governments, who disseminates the opportunities and benefits of energy efficiency. We do need other speakers, communicated by the private sector, NGOs, civil society. Oh, Gemma will tell us the needs to articulate amongst different players. We must all work together to deliver the same message to all the different sectors. And incentives. We have monetary and non-monetary incentives. Monetary, we talk about rates. Many times we have certain subventions for diagnosis, for audits, financial rates, subsidized rates with concessions. Then the role of the state, of course, is key. These are mechanisms which are structured, very complicated structure. They require funds, sometimes easier to say, to render a loan. No, with subsidy rates. No, it's not free. it has a cost. So we have to look for who pays for that cost. When they say that the state, for example, they can lower the taxes or lower VAT, well, that has a cost implied as well. It's a fiscal cost, which we had to add the complication of the taxes as well, which many countries have to go through. Congress, this has to be passed through Congress. There's another additional complication. So there are solutions. If are not easy, the majority are not easy. And the public sector has the opportunity, has enabling condition, as Stephanie says, so the private sector can carry out these investments. And the model, the ESCO model, is a very good example of this. There are experiences from many countries where the country generates the ESCO model within a contract model which is visible, is formally submitted, so the private sector leverages itself on this model for its business and, well, implemented the ESCO model as parts of its business. So the state is key to generate the conditions, enabling conditions in certain cases with more or less intervention. And lastly, we have these incentives, which are non-monetary, which is just as important for many other companies, especially the larger companies. Sometimes a public acknowledgement. Well, we have the case of Mexico, for example, which has its voluntary agreements, its acknowledgements from efficient sometimes is very important. And to obtain this, they make huge efforts and they comply with their commitments for the state. For the state, the relation cost-benefit is very good here because with little effort, agreements are made, treaties are signed, these are monitored, these generally require resources, but not significant economic resources, because these are activities which require public resources sometimes, even though it may not seem so. So there are many models. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Everything has been already invented already. The challenge is to see which of these models, because it's not just one solution, to apply best to each of the countries and to the context of each, within the context of each country. That's key, right? Through this whole battery of solutions, what's the most adequate to the reality of each country? And Andrea, take on your words here as well, that in Latin American context, where the fiscal cost on investment of the public weight sometimes is associated to social benefits that are not very much linked to energy efficiency. We say that energy efficiency is a very good business because it has economic returns. So in this activities where there are economic returns, sometimes it's difficult obtaining public resources, because you say if that the cost of opportunity is in healthcare, on pensions, and education. Well, why am I going to take it on to energy? Because we recover energy anyway. So that's a very good latent contingency in Latin America, which has been going down in terms of resources that are being invested on. And we see that we start competing versus other uses of energy, for example, regarding decarbonization. So a question for Gemma is how energy efficiency is an alternative for the lack of climate finances. We say we compete, but energy efficiency truly is a tool against climate change. We say there's not even better power than power not used. So this message, which should reach the private sector, maybe it's not so evidently communicated. What about you, Gemma? The potential of energy efficiency as this ally towards the needs of climate financing. Well, before I answer your question, I'd like to present Alinea as a think tank of climate action, which has headquarters in Madrid, i.e. University, supported by the European Foundation as well. From the academic perspective, we work on the public agenda, on the climate agenda, through multiplayer dialogue here. So one of the sectors where we're working on right now is the green industry in Latin America. For this purpose, we have worked with certain institutions for more than 40 players from different sectors, the public, private, and sector, multilateral organizations, and from the the academic world as well.
El resultado de estos diálogos ha sido
The result of these dialogues or these discussions has been a report where we've collected the conclusions and a series of recommendations. Linking this with your question, therefore, Rosa, what we've seen is a gap of financing, climate financing, very strong in Latin America. The LAC figures mentions that it's necessary between 3.7 or 4.9% of the annual GDP till 2030 for this. In our dialogues, we have had this need being expressed of covering this financial gap. And we do see that energy efficiency investment linked to climate targets is an opportunity also for companies of the private sector. But we're not talking about how much we have to mobilize on investment, if not for who and for what purpose. And for these targets, climate change targets, it's an opportunity to invest and to focus on energy efficiency. Also, not just to limit ourselves on financing large companies, if not that we reach other sectors as well, such as SMEs, cooperatives, local farmers and producers, municipalities, councils and households. So what we are saying in our report is that green transition takes benefits, not is used also for a social territorial question also. We propose the use of different mechanisms for finance, therefore, which could be from microcredits or microloans to acquire green technology or clean technology, or green warranties or green mortgages. And small producers or farmers can obtain this capital as well. It's important that this transition or this opportunity that we have as a society reaches all, right? There's a space also through energy efficiency of tackling other issues such as energy poverty, access to quality energy and clean energy. Here in Chile, we've been working on very much on this side. When projects sometimes are not enough, it's something critical in energy efficiency as well, because we could talk about that there's many cases where, economically speaking, returns do arrive in the short term. They allow a flow for investment, but there's other sectors of the society where it's not enough. How we taking on the challenges? I mean, where we allocate this public weight here, or burden, let's say. So I wanted to ask you also, Stephanie, because within this challenge on how I allocate the burdens, many times companies face the decision of I'm going to the productive side, what I already know, or I'm going to bet on energy, for example, which I'm just going to include it in my spreadsheets and I can pay for it, versus, well, I know about this business, I know where opportunities of efficiency lie. So we're talking about energy efficiency, where we compete for this investment. And once we have these discussions, we hear that, well, what I know is safer. What you know about energy, for example, is not so safe for me, for example. How can we tackle that perception of the private sector that energy efficiency, therefore, has risk, mainly due to lack of knowledge? And with other investments are left behind. Yeah, I've faced this many times. And not only from the private sector or for companies, but also see this from banks as well. So both will say, oh, I think I prefer to invest in an expansion project or a new production line, even though, if we see here transparently, there are risks. If there's a new line of production, for example, who can guarantee that you're going to be able to sell your product? And when it's going to be actually manufactured? So this actual risk. One competitor is doing this, in another country doing the same thing. I don't know, maybe the demand for this type of shoe or footwear, for example, will go down, or the price will go down, or the raw material will actually increase. It's going to cost too much. So all these things, the risks are many and external. If we look at the energy efficiency project, it's complex from the company point of view. But if we hire somebody who knows what it's all about, a consultant or an engineering company maybe, or an ESCO, anyone trained on this, who will replace, therefore, an air conditioner, for example. They're going to install a solar panel to generate energy, or a solar water heater, for example. All this, well, changing the illumination, changing the furnace, or I mean, all these things. What are the possibilities that no savings will be made? Very little, I believe. Maybe you'll reach 90% of what, maybe 80%, maybe 120%. This uncertainty, this is where the uncertainty lies. But the possibility that it's not going to change nothing, well, that's nearly zero. So these risks are eternal. I mean, if companies continuing producing, if the hotel continues being full, well, all the equipment's going to be used, and new equipments are new. So therefore, less possibility that they'll break down or they're not going to work properly. So there are new equipments. You don't have to replace them during the next 5-10 years. So all these risks are internal. You could work with a company, consultants who can guarantee savings or calculate the risk at least. So therefore, the challenges are lower. So for a bank, for this company, risks, I'm not saying that there's zero risks, but much less than launching a new production line, for example. I could say that once a bank understands this logic, that they take the time to train other banks, or to train or inform the credit function officials who analyze projects. Well, I've done that with development banks or commercial banks as well. And they say, oh, well, maybe you can reduce the collaterals for these projects, because risks at the end of the day are a few, and they generate a cash flow or reducing the energy costs at least. So therefore, this customer is going to be more willing to pay off the it very quickly, because all the savings are on day one. They're going to save money. We're going to carry out savings on the first day. The new line of shoes, maybe on first day, they're not going to sell enough to pay back this loan. So this perception of risk is very important also. We must change it, and people must understand that the management of these risks is an internal thing, not external. So you have to identify external and internal issues, and there are other market players who can help to mitigate this. More at hand than the forecasting, the demand, the behavior of the market, where it's very changing, also the needs. In this sense, we from the agency, we share this challenge of showing that sometimes there's not so much risk implementing projects which are innovative, which during the first ones are a bit difficult. Of course, those who had the opportunity to participate at the beginning of the day, we told them about the Community Solar Park project, which is the first at a national level. It's a distributed generation with a remote equipment with local players who benefit a locality that is not necessarily within the same place where all the equipment lies. So it has many elements for innovation here, which could be carried out since 2021 under regulation, but due to different reasons it hadn't happened. So there's a role there from public institutions and the state. First is to show, right? To test the regulation or the normative on what are the elements which generate more costs, etc. So, but once you make it public, it's very difficult to scale, because we don't have resources to make community solar parks for the whole of Chile. It's not the role, nor the vision, not our vision. So I think one of the challenges in energy efficiency has to do with how I can actually make public for it to be scalable, to show everyone, to make it scalable. We showed 42 schools of energy efficiency, 1,700 educational establishments of the countries that do require these investments. The first 42, we did this in the first 42 schools, and now how can we reach this rest of the schools? How can we show the market that we have this potential, and that somehow with energy efficiency we can improve even the educational process, the quality of life of these children, teachers, etc. From the public sector, therefore, we are pretty clear on the challenges. But how does the private sector regard this? Andrea, do you know about how can we scale these solutions, which from the public side, we can take the first steps, but to consolidate this as a market practice is complicated. Well, we can't do everything with public resources, and rightfully, I do believe that here is where the challenge lies from the public side, to reinforce the pillars that I was mentioning in certain cases, regulation, because larger users can do this because they have a financial backup for this. And sometimes the regulation, certain obligations, what we need here for them to make this final decision. In other sectors, I'm talking about medium size and small scale regarding the industry and the residential sector, I believe that here the role of the state is to generate these enabling frameworks so the private sector can do it. Now, regarding sharing success cases is key for the industrial sector especially, and transport. It's not the same that we, as a government or international organism, show or explain a case and the advantages of rechanging furnaces or improving the fuel system, whatever. If a company says, look, I, who have this name, this activity, this recognition, I've done it before and it gave me these results. That has a huge value, but so this result communication occurs, we have to generate it from the state sometimes, or many times, and it has to do with the incentives that I was mentioning. Public acknowledgement. As a counterpart, what I request you to share your case with figures, backed up with figures, of course. Don't reveal without revealing confidential information, but of course, so others can encourage themselves to do the same and generate this dialogue or these discussions. It's something that the public sector can do without so many resources, but the rest has to come from private sector resources, from the banks, is key, and to value the co-benefits. Stephanie was talking about competition between energy efficiency projects and enhancing capacity. We must not lose sight that many times energy efficiency is enabled itself, enhancing, expanding productivity. Many companies can't expand because they have a certain limitations within their supply of natural gas or in the electrical substations. So we had to change the whole thing, or the distributor is not going to change it on their own account. So I assume the cost of changing these substations are enormous, and working on an issue of efficiency to optimize cost consumption will increase capacity, and also there are many cases with truly significant figures. We're talking about 20% or more an increase, or 30% increase on capacity without increasing the energy consumption. So it's not a co-benefit at the end of the day, it's an enabling condition. You have to sensitivize it. So this is where the state can have an active role without needing too many economic resources. Strengthening trainings and skills is key. The bank, of course, to generate these types of models. The ESCO model, we had a workshop on Monday, for example, regarding the Energy Week. So we believe that it's a huge challenge. And I believe that as a region, there's an opportunity here, which we're not making most of yet, of boosting a regional market of energy efficiency, to have somehow to identify local certified vendors. There are certifications, in fact, that we could valorize and to say, look, this is the regional record of professionals for ABC thing, for example, because I say energy efficiency is a whole world. A professional experience for retrofits, it's not for households or buildings, not the same than a professional with experience for large energy efficiency projects in or to design code generation for large companies. No, we need different profiles, identified. They have to be classified, certified somehow. And that also is a role of the state. I think we have the opportunity here to work at a regional level, therefore, generating these validations, these certifications, and also training, and to share lessons learned and different cases. There's a lot of experience in many countries. I go back to Chile, Uruguay, Colombia, Mexico, many countries with a lot of experience in the region which could share their knowledge. The challenge is how to generate these environments for discussion. We always have the same challenges, and every year we always ask ourselves, why couldn't we make energy more efficient? Well, hopefully next event we're going to have more people listening to this, but learn about tools, new tools, instruments, and how the state and international organisms, what can we offer for this to occur in the private sector, for the private sector, with the private sector, but with all the public scaffolding, let's say, as a support and as a booster. I believe that this is a huge challenge. And not every year, we can't be renewing this. We have to start looking for truly how we can lower this concretely. There's so much to be done, yes, but as what you say from the concrete, and more than likely with other voices as well, because I do believe that there's a lot of what has been mentioned here on energy efficiency, mentioned in the same spaces itself, or events. The challenge of for this to become a tool for decarbonization to tackle climate change, I do believe that it has this challenge also. Stop talking about savings and start talking on reducing emissions, to find in other spaces of dialogue maybe the way of showing the value of energy efficiency beyond saving energy only. Regarding cooperation, there's so much to be done as well. It would be great to have everyone available here on this, but it doesn't happen. So the few people that we have amongst different countries, together we can progress forward. I'd like to ask you, Gemma, how do you see this from the point of view of all cooperation, be by regional cooperation, because we have in the region spaces for cooperation, but also with other continents there are different spaces for collaboration. And to learn best practices on enabling conditions which have happened. We are progressing on the green taxonomy, which can allow to finance these types of projects, to have this common language with the bank. Tell us a little bit more on your vision. How do you see those spaces for cooperation amongst different regions to progress forward on energy efficiency? We're going through an international context that is very much fragmented, and we do understand that the strategic alliance between Latin America, the European Union, and Caribbean is more and more relevant on climate action, especially reduction of emissions and energy efficiency. Well, we've analyzed and we've seen that there's a lack of common standards, a lot of fragmentation on regulations as well. The results of this means that there's little attraction for investment. There's too much uncertainty for investors. That's what we see. And for bi-regional cooperation, we see that we can cooperate in three main dimensions. First of all, making most of the sustainability standards already developed in the European Union. We can convey this at a Latin American and Caribbean level, and this would generate more certainty, at least, for investors, and to channel these investments that are so necessary, energy efficiency and decarbonization of the industry. Second, the green taxonomies we also see that we're progressing more on this, but countries are different speeds. All different countries progress on different speeds. Green taxonomy, we need some sort of we need it to exist at a European level and linked to the global market, generating certainty, therefore, and hopefully cooperating in this sense. And our analysis also mentioned very much so on that there are many instruments already existing we could make most of, like the Global Gateway, for example. We propose here is to make most of the resources of the Global Gateway to continue cooperating with this development of regulations. Hopefully it will promote and boost new projects and encourage them aligned with energy efficiency. Thank you, Gemma. We will talk later during the break. We have a couple of minutes left, and I'd just like to request to share, please, a reflection on the challenges of energy efficiency. Each of you are leaders in your own environment, so I'd like to ask you, hopefully, to convey your message to our audience. Where are the challenges lying? What do you see on the matters of energy efficiency? And hopefully, to give us a tip or some advice. This wasn't really prepared. It's a tip on challenges and a tip for everyone, for all of us here. We're interested on progressing forward. And maybe from your experience, you can have a greater some lessons learned towards encouraging energy efficiency. Any volunteers to start? Well, for me, the advice is to add efforts. The effort. I see many times that there's some sort of zealousy thinking. Why should we have this joint work or work together? Because if we all get involved, maybe I'm going to lose my protagonism or financing. But the opportunity is huge, I believe. We must add efforts from the public, private sector, international organisms, organizations, development banks, financing. Because if not, we're not going to be able to capture all the benefits that we have as a region to implement energy efficiency as part of the decarbonization process. So we do need to add efforts. How much effort are available currently in this room? Maybe they're a little bit lower. We could add that. Over there, they raise their hands. There's some efforts there available for all. Stephanie or Gemma? Adding efforts here, what I see, it's very important to communicate, disseminate to all players, to consumers and producers. It's very important to communicate and to share experiences and dialogue. This is a task and advice that we can all take back home. Each of us must communicate to others the energy efficiency, the potential that exists for this, and how, through creating alliances, we can tackle this potential that we have and that the planet requires to be able to make energy something sustainable. Stephanie, it's your turn. My advice would be to start off, what can I do about things? Me at home, I at my workplace, for example. To start with baby steps, little actions, but which could be repeated, duplicated, and therefore at work or at home or in their institution. They can also consider energy efficiency. For me, energy efficiency is first, before installing a solar panel, for example. Energy efficiency first. And it's not just because, I'm in a country where we have a lot of energy or power, it's cheap. I'm not going to create any impact. Well, I'm from Quebec, in Canada, where electricity is very cheap, yet there are incentives, nevertheless, to improve even more so households to improve the systems, energy systems, or power systems to consume less. It's a global movement for decarbonizing the world. Energy can be somewhere else even. So if we consume better or use better, we can sell energy to our neighbors who don't have this advantage of having hydroelectricity and hydropower and low-cost power. So we must think about this also. And our planet will not survive, We're not going to be able to produce solar panels or wind farms for the whole demand that exists. So let's start at home and encourage others. There are no challenges with high prices. It's all worthwhile. So the important thing is to identify what's at the hands of each, right? Many times we think that, it's the large companies that who consume more, so for them to reduce their expense. But of course, we do need them to do this also. But the truth is that we need all sectors to be able to use efficiently energy and for it to be compatible with this our planet that we expect our next generations to inherit, and which legitimately they have the right to enjoy the same benefits that we had using energy. So therefore, identifying what we have in our hands available, and I invite maybe to put a face to energy efficiency. Apart from, considering your reflection, what had to do with the fact that many times our first actions of sustainability have to do with, I'm going to install a solar panel. Because they're very evident, right? You can see them. I'm not saying that we don't have to do it, But after optimizing our consumption, because at the same time we have this optimization of consumption, and maybe we don't see it so evidently, what we've conveyed here is that if energy efficiency is that power which people generate with their decision-making consciousness. So the face of energy efficiency is everyone, really, who made the decision of consuming energy differently and release these resources for us to be used in a different way and therefore have a better planet for everyone. I'd like to end my words thanking the audience for participating, inviting you to tell everybody else, those who couldn't attend, on energy efficiency, and of course to be in contact with each of the institutions on this panel, because as Andrea said, alliances are those which will allow us to progress forward. So if we can generate alliances amongst ourselves, that's a step towards better energy efficiency. A round of applause for ourselves and for our panelists. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Rosa, por la moderación. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Rosa, for our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosa. Yes, it's really important to share what we know and also being able to make progress. Please, let's take a picture of the panel so that we can continue with the program. So here's our photographers. We have Adriana, our cameras.